Welcome to the first episode of Employsure's HR Bootcamp webinar series. We're so excited to have you all here today. My name is Jess and I'm your small business personal trainer. Over 4 episodes, this webinar series will build your business stamina, create workplace athletes, and overcome corporate hurdles. In this episode, we are looking at top 5 HR tips to improve your business. Joining me today is our special guest, Isabella, one of our employment relations advisors in the advice team. Welcome, Isabella. Thanks so much for coming. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your experience in advising small businesses?
Yeah. So I started at Employsure about 2 years ago, and ever since then I've been advising our clients on their everyday employment relation matters. The main topics I've come across is termination of employees, absenteeism, and entitlements and wages. My role at Employsure is to see what our clients' objectives are and to provide them with recommendations which are in line with legislation. Apart from this, my aim is to also educate clients about any employment relation matters to ensure that their business is covered to mitigate any risks in the future. As we all know, employment relations can be quite a complex topic, so our aim is to take the stress out of this so you can focus on what you do best, and that's your business.
That's fantastic work. Thanks so much for that. While we wait for more people to log onto the webcast, we'll talk you through the main features of the webinar platform so you can get involved in all the action. Firstly, to submit your questions, please click on the Q&A widget. Isabella and I will take a break halfway through the webinar to answer some of your questions, so please send them in early. Secondly, the webinar comes with the free HR Shape Up workbook. The workbook covers all content from today's episode, so we encourage you to download it. You can also do this by clicking on the resource widget. Next up, to register for the next episode of the HR Bootcamp, please click on the calendar widget.
As part of this webinar series, we're also offering a free face-to-face meeting with an Employsure representative who will personally come out to your business to check for areas of non-compliance. At the end of the webinar, a survey will pop up asking you for feedback. You can fill the survey out at any time by clicking on the survey widget. Finally, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please don't forget to refresh your browser. If the issue persists, please don't hesitate to send us a message through the Q&A button, and one of our team will be happy to assist.
The core steps that we'll be talking about today are building a strong company culture, creating better employment contracts, identifying and preventing micromanagement, cost-effectively promoting employees, and lastly, fostering mentally healthy workplaces. Let's kick things off with our first interactive poll question to see how many people in the audience have a company culture in place. Please tick the answers that ring true to your business at this current moment. First one, our company culture has company values, training days, and spending time with employees to improve their performance to reflect the business's core values. Second, our company culture has company values, but values are not always enforced. 3, our business does not have a company culture. Or 4, other. We'll come back to the answers in just a minute. Our first section is building a strong company culture. Company culture is typically defined as the personality of your organisation. It is how your business presents itself, the values it believes in, and the morals it holds. Company culture will be created whether you intend to create it or not. Your staff will create their own way of working, and you will find your business attracts certain type of personalities. Together, this will give your business a reputation and culture your staff will identify with. The difference between company culture and a strong company culture is the effort and attention you put in to consciously develop and share the business's personality. Isabella, what do you think are the benefits of having a strong company culture?
Yeah. So when you're running a small business, it's easy to neglect company culture, which is completely understandable when you have so many plates spinning. However, creating a strong, positive personality for your business doesn't have to be a big and difficult task. On your screens, you will see 5 of the biggest benefits of enforcing company culture. Firstly, is that employees actually understand what top management expects from them and how they should respond to any situation based on your company culture. Secondly, your employees will believe that the expected approach is the appropriate one for the workplace. This will reduce any doubt and prevent some sort of winging it attitude if everyone is on the same page. Thirdly, your employees will know that they can expect to be rewarded for demonstrating the organisation's values, which in turn leads to less confusion and stress and increases productivity as well. Another really important point is that employees' job satisfaction will increase as your staff will feel more comfortable in the workplace environment. They'll feel more trusted and secure in the role, which will lead to less staff turnover and a stronger sense of community in the workplace. And lastly, with a unified set of internal company beliefs, you can start to see a reduction in staff turnover, increase your profits, and boost employees' productivity by 6.6%.
That's really good to hear. I do feel that two of those points are probably very relevant. So employees know that they can expect to be rewarded for demonstrating organisational values. Now, I think it's important that people's values align. People understand one another, everyone does the right thing for the right reasons, and the common purpose and understanding helps people build great working relationships. Values and alignment help the organisation as a whole to achieve its core mission. And the second point, employee job satisfaction will increase as your staff will feel more comfortable in their workplace environment. Regular meetings with staff are vital, and they allow management to provide feedback to employees about their role and their contribution to the organisation. It also allows employees to speak about their goals and how management can help achieve and facilitate these. Let's quickly go back to the results of the poll question, which should now appear on your screens. Okay, so 43% agree with option A, 35% of you agree with option B, 19% of you agree with option C, and only 3 of you have said other.
Wow, it's really good to see that the majority of you have some sort of company culture in place, and you take the time to strengthen this with your employees. For those of you who don't, that's okay. It's never too late to implement strategies to improve your business, which is what we aim to show you today.
So Isabella, you mentioned earlier that creating a positive personality doesn't have to be a big task. What are your top 3 best practice tips to help our audience members who are just getting started?
Yeah. So firstly, the main one is to define your key values and keep them tight. A good way to think about this is to think about your company as a person. Try and align the person's personality traits with the good values your company already embodies. At the end of this, you'll be left with the traits you want to establish in the company. And you'll also see the traits that maybe don't align with your company and are not acceptable. Once the values have been determined, you can introduce them to your team. If they're not adhered to, stick to them. And also, remember to reward your staff who make a conscious effort to engage. Secondly, is to trust your employees. Employee engagement is vital for a successful company culture. Through trust and communication with your employees, you'll have more of a satisfied team. This creates a sense of community and team spirit, which will help fuel and shape the company culture. Lack of trust is often the biggest roadblock that many of our viewers may be facing. Dedicate some time to identify where any mistrust may stem from and see who is best to discuss these with. And lastly is to acknowledge, reward and support. So an excellent method to keep staff engaged is to acknowledge and reward their hard work. It can be as easy as Friday donuts and coffee, which we all love, or even a well done for a creative approach that resolves a common problem in the business. But remember, you only want to reward the kind of behaviour that aligns with your key values. A top performer with a bad attitude may miss out on a reward, as their values and their attitude don't demonstrate the company's values. One of the greatest allies in this instance is also your managers. Encouraging them to take a moment to praise their staff doesn't cost anything, but it goes a long way with staff satisfaction, which will in turn boost the company culture.
Thanks, Isabella. That's really great advice. Building on your best practice tips, it's also important to know how to relax and how to let loose. Whilst professionalism is often key to a business's success, Rigid and work-only relationships with employees can wear down staff morale and cause disengagement for a company culture perspective. Regardless of the business or industry that you guys are in, there are always opportunities to let loose and just have a little fun. Finally, consistency is key. Being consistent with your company culture is the only way to create a strong but enduring one. Implementing company values starts at the hiring stage and is cemented during orientation. It will also require occasional touch-ups, having regular meetings and events with staff to help enforce these company values. It will also help staff feel very valued and give them an opportunity to feel part of the team. So Isabella, are there any companies you feel have an inspirational organisational culture?
Yeah, so the first company that comes to mind is Twitter. They focus their attention on creating a great mission statement, make the world more connected and open. They also focus on listening to their staff and building a supportive and motivational team environment, which helps the culture of the company as their employees truly believe in what the company stands for. Twitter also has a great reward system for employees, such as free lunch for all employees and also unlimited leave for those eligible. I know that Twitter's quite a big company and they probably have a big budget. However, implementing a great company culture doesn't need to break the bank. As we mentioned before, it can be as easy as Friday donuts, celebrating birthdays, or even having team lunches.
If you haven't downloaded it already, we encourage you to download the workbook in the resource section. It's packed with reflective questions for you to check out how your company culture stacks up. Let's move on to our next topic, strengthening contracts. One of the biggest mistakes we see that business owners make is underestimating contracts. Knowing how to strengthen your contracts will help you overcome corporate hurdles. An employment contract not only defines the relationship between an employer and an employee, but it shapes how the employee fits into the company, spelling clearly how their roles link to the framework of the business. From a legal perspective, an employment contract protects employers. It also sets out the rights and obligations of the employee and the employer who are parties to that contract. Let's do a quick poll and see how regularly our audience updates their contracts. So, the question is, how regularly do you update your contracts? The first one, our employment contracts are updated following amendments to an employee's role or entitlements. The second one, our employment contracts are updated annually. Third, our employment contracts are not updated. And number 4, we do not have any employment contracts in place. We'll come back to those results in just a minute. So Isabella, can you talk us through the key elements that every employment contract should contain?
So an employment contract can be as detailed or as brief as the employer wishes. However, it needs to have the following 3 elements. It needs to have an offer, consideration, and an acceptance. If any of the 3 are missing, the contract is no longer legally enforceable. Another thing that we always recommend is to have contracts signed by a witness.
So it's clear that employment contracts are a safety net for employers. From your personal experience, are there any scenarios that have been especially helpful?
So the first thing that contracts are quite useful for is when you need to discuss any rights, duties, promises or arrangements within the working relationship. And secondly, if a dispute arises. I've had many clients which have avoided claims because there's a contract in place, which has clearly set out the conditions of the working relationship. On the flip side, not having a contract can lead to unnecessary stress. Just last week, I spoke to a client which was dealing with an underpayment claim. Their employee thought they were a casual employee, which obviously meant that they would receive a higher rate of pay. However, our client was adamant that she was engaged on a part-time basis. With a contract in place, this could have been avoided, as the working relationship would have been very clear.
Is there anything else that employees need to consider?
So when looking at employment contracts, we need to consider legislation relating to various employment conditions such as leave and rates of pay, any verbal agreements, any custom and practices that you have in your own workplace, common law rules and terms, any implied terms of the contract, any professional practices that your industry may have, and of course, workplace policies and any employment handbooks that you may already have in place.
Great. Let's return to the poll question to see how regularly the viewers update their employees' employment contracts. Okay, so 43% of you agree with option A, 27% of you agree with option B, 17% of you agree with option C, and lastly, 13% of you agree with option D. It's great to hear that most of our audiences update contracts following changes to an employee's role and entitlements. Isabella, why is this so important?
The reason why updating a contract is so important is that if they're not updated, it can cause issues in the event of a dispute. And often it's left to a court or other relevant tribunal to decide what the terms of the contract are. Once again, it's a good idea to have your employment contracts checked by either a lawyer or a workplace relations specialist. As a matter of best practice, an updated contract should be provided prior to a change. Do note that if there are any changes that you'd like to make to an employment contract, it needs to be done by mutual agreement between both parties.
Great, thanks for that. Let's move on to our next topic, steering clear of micromanaging. Cutting out micromanaging is a sure way to get your business in shape. Micromanagement is the top complaint people have about their bosses. And in today's job market, where workers have more options, there is a growing concern for employers. It can kill motivation, employee creativity, and job satisfaction. Yet it remains the biggest issue workers have about their bosses. Micromanagement is rarely referred to as a positive quality. Most of us see it as a way for management to ensure that tasks are performed in a very precise and regimented manner. It tends to be more process-driven rather than results-driven. So Isabella, what are the signs of closeted micromanagement?
The most common signs of micromanagement is if you're keeping a low priority task for yourself instead of delegating them to other employees. Often micromanagers see delegation as a sign of lack of control. Do you neglect sharing ideas and visions within your team? And do you try and control the flow of information? For example, insisting on being CC'd into every email, or even having all discussions about emails or meetings go through you first.
Okay, and what are the conscious steps that people should take to adopt and minimize micromanagement?
So businesses can do things such as setting weekly meetings to track regular progress, focus on results rather than process, talk to your team, not at them, develop coaching and delegation skills, and also pretend it's a day before a vacation. What I mean by that is letting go of all the low-key priority tasks and only keeping the ones that you need to keep.
Correct. On your screens, you'll see a collection of quotes courtesy of npr.org. You'll see here there are about 4 points, and it does look like things that clients do call us up about on a regular basis. One of my friends actually told me that a boss of hers would actually come to her with critical or emergency tasks, which they actually weren't. And it was 10 minutes before she was actually due to finish work. So
I haven't had any personal experiences either, but again with my friend, she always tells me that one of her managers walks past her desk, check what she's doing on her computer every half an hour, and also if her manager sees her talking to another member of staff, she'll quickly come over to see what the conversation's about.
Yeah, we definitely have heard some of those on a daily basis. So we have covered a lot of information in the last few slides, so let's take a break to answer some of the questions that have come through to our Q&A widget. Now, there are a fair few that have come through, but Isabella and I will answer one question each. So the first one is, I have an employee who was taking the day off because they were sick. Do I need to pay them personal carers leave? Now that is a really good question, and one that Isabella and I do get on a regular basis. What's really important to understand firstly is, are your employees casual or are they part-time or full-time? Because it's only your part-time and your full-time employees that are entitled to paid personal carers leave. In this instance, what I would probably recommend is to see if you guys have any policies and procedures in relation to personal leave. i.e., is there a certain way employees need to notify of their absence, and when do they need to actually provide evidence of their absence? Is it 1 day? Is it every 2 days, etc.? If you guys don't have any policies in place, I would probably recommend to see if you guys have actually given out memos to notify the employees of their obligations in relation to absence. Now, to answer your questions in terms of do I have to pay my employees, if you guys have policies or a memo in place to state their obligations and your employees have failed to meet those obligations, it would actually be leave without pay. However, if you guys don't have policies in place and we haven't actually advised the employees of what their obligations are, then you may actually need to pay personal carers leave.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the next question that I have here is, can I ask my employees to keep a log of their daily activities and ask them to send this to me at the end of each day? Basically, it just depends on whether or not your request is reasonable. If the request relates to the inherent requirements of someone's role, such as they have KPIs that you need to track, they need to send reports for their role, then of course you can ask that. However, if it's just little tasks that you want to monitor, then I wouldn't advise to do that, as you can come across as a micromanager.
Thanks so much for sending your questions through, guys. An Employsure representative will actually be available to answer any further questions that we have received on the Q&A widget. Let's move on to our next topic, horizontal promotions. Horizontal promotions can play a huge role in shaping up your business. Unlike big corporations, promotions are not always easy to come by. The framework and structure of small businesses don't always allow for it. However, your employees want to grow. So how do you actually balance the two? Not all promotions need to be vertical. You can cross-skill your staff, give them more experience, exposure, and a steeper learning curve. This is known as horizontal promotion, where a staff member is given greater responsibility and therefore more compensation, but without greater managerial authority. The main difference between horizontal and vertical growth is the type of personal accomplishment. Vertical growth tends to focus on a flashy new job title, whereas horizontal promotion is a way to create value in a role and business. So Isabella, what are the benefits of horizontal promotions?
Yeah. So the first benefit for horizontal promotions is leverage. It allows your staff to move across in their career, allowing them to leverage and improve on the skills that they may already have and take on new responsibilities. Next one is sightseeing. So climbing up gives an employee the same view but from a different vantage point. By going across, they will have the opportunity to meet new people, have new skills, and also see what different departments do. The next one is laying foundations. Horizontal and vertical promotions don't always have to be two separate initiatives. They can actually complement each other. Horizontal promotions are like laying out the foundations for an employee's career that will make them feel anchored in the business and eventually prepare them from any vertical promotions that may arise. The next one is experimentation. So by taking on greater responsibilities and branching out within the business, employees will have a unique opportunity to try new ways of thinking and explore new approaches within the business. This can have a positive impact not only for their career, but it can also flow down to their personal life as well. And lastly is growing the company. So horizontal promotions are not only beneficial for an individual, but they are also vital for the growth of the business. Creating staff who are fluent in a variety of different disciplines that bridge gaps between different company functions is guaranteed to put your business ahead of those who still caught up with specific job titles and concrete skill sets.
This actually ties in nicely with the first step that we discussed about company culture. It needs to play a huge role in this kind of career advancement. It's up to you to inspire your team members to pursue natural offshoots of their current responsibilities within the business. As people train in cross-company disciplines, they'll be better able to scale their workload up or down, depending on the circumstances. On your screen are some best practice tips for you guys to follow. Firstly, focus on purpose and not on titles. Use new challenges as motivation. Do the work that you want. And lastly, consider temporary moves or even secondments. So, Isabella, how do you know if horizontal promotions are right for your business?
Yeah. So there's a few questions that you should consider if horizontal promotions are right for the business. So the first one is, does your business value breadth and depth of skill, or is it important that your staff are experts in a singular role? Is change embraced in your business? Do your staff need to adapt quickly and practice a trial and error style of thinking? Or does your company rely on fixed rules, structural processes, and minimal updates and changes? Thirdly is, could your company culture benefit from more horizontal structure where staff share elements of each other's roles? The next one is, can your business afford to have several decision makers, or is the decision going to lie within one particular stakeholder? And lastly is, think about your staff. Would they appreciate the opportunity to broaden their skills? Or do you have a team that's made up of people who would rather climb the path that they're already on?
One company out there who is a pioneer and leader in horizontal promotions is actually Google. So the purpose and impact are essential at Google. Employees care less about their title or level within the company. Many people stay at Google because they are motivated by the company's mission, its security, its perks, its compensation, and also its family benefits.
Yeah, and also apart from that, Google's mission gives individuals work meaning because it's moral rather than a business goal. At Google, employees also have the freedom to start new side projects, change the scope of their role, or even move to a different role altogether. Their hiring strategy focuses on candidates with cognitive ability, since many of the roles at Google require the ability to constantly adapt to any changes there may be.
Yeah, great. Let's move on to the final step of this webinar, mentally healthy workplaces. A positive work environment produces the best outcome. Investing in your employees' mental well-being is paramount to investing in your business's success. When deciding on what your company culture will look like, it's unlikely you have said depressed, somber, and based on fear. Developing strategies for a healthy workplace guarantees higher staff morale, fewer risks to your business from bullying and harassment claims, and consistent or even increased productivity, as everyone can just simply get the job done. A mentally healthy workplace is all about encouraging productivity, getting the best out of people, supporting your employees, and building a thriving and safe working environment where everyone wants to work. So Isabella, how can our audience foster a mentally healthy working environment?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is to work with your employees. So you can't begin to fix a problem if you don't actually know why your employees are unhappy. There are many reasons that your employees may feel low in the workplace, such as lack of communication, shortened time frames, lack of direction in their career, and also in extreme circumstances, bullying, harassment. Your first step is to diagnose any issues that you may have in the workplace and work together to resolve these problems. The next one is to encourage positivity. It is important to create a positive work environment for all employees. Little things such as sending an email to praise hard work or even encourage socializing when on meal breaks boosts comradeship and helps your employees feel more at home whilst they're at work. And lastly is to strategize. So holding business strategy days is a great opportunity for employees to voice their ideas for company growth, as well as keeping them in the loop of any changes there may be. Sharing and strategizing with your staff can help prevent stresses from taking a hold and turning the mood of the team from excited to apprehensive.
So there are actually a couple of questions that you guys should consider. We are always told to put on our oxygen mask on before helping others. Do you have a plan for yourself? and for how you take care of your own mental health. And what is it? The second one, what resources do you currently have available to address mental health in your business? And thirdly, how do you educate yourself and your staff about the signs and symptoms of mental health? So finally, Isabella, do you have any examples of a business who have undergone a journey to create a mentally healthy workplace?
Yeah, actually, so a great company that comes to mind is BHP. So BHP's current mental health framework is built upon 4 pillars. You have culture, capacity, prevention, and recovery. So their initial focus was to raise awareness and reduce the stigma associated with mental health. This was done through support from senior leaders, developing and delivering videos about mental health, establishing employee assist programs globally, and encouraging conversations about mental health in the workplace. Since the changes and the increase in awareness, BHP has seen a significant improvement in their wellbeing index, and their employee assistance programs are considered best practice in the industry.
Well, we've covered a lot of information, guys, so thank you, Isabella, for joining me on this webinar. And thank you guys for sending in all your questions. If any questions have been unanswered, like I did state before, an Employsure representative will be in touch. You'll actually receive an email with the recording of the webinar so that you can watch it on demand. Lastly, if you are unsure or you're confronted with a complicated situation, we do recommend that you consult a workplace specialist so you can be confident in all your decisions and your actions. You can contact the team and the number is 1300 832 795. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Bye.